Thank you. It's good to be home. I want to introduce both of them and then let them take it from there, and then I'll have some questions, and y'all be thinking of questions that you have for them as well. Author Breanna J. McDaniel, who grew up in the lively communities of College Park and East Point, Georgia, surrounded by siblings and cousins, brings a vibrant voice to children's literature. Breanna's books reflect the rich tapestry of her upbringing as she blends cherished traditions with the joys, challenges, and fantastic possibilities she chooses to portray. With a passion for storytelling, Bree published her debut picture book, Hands Up, in 2019, which tells the story of many reasons a young black girl puts her hands up, including to march for social justice. Atlanta My Home celebrates the place Bree calls home. In 2022, she published Impossible Moon, the story of a black girl's journey to the moon, and forthcoming is Cute Toot, the story of a farting contest between two sisters. Gotta get that one. I'm glad her childhood dream. Woo! I hadn't seen the paper version. I'm glad her childhood dreams of becoming a combination archaeologist and lawyer took a different turn because these are stories we need in children's literature. Amidst her adventures and academic pursuits, including earning a doctoral degree recently, Bree finds solace in the embrace of her community, particularly the circle of exceptional black women and girls who love support and whose love, support, and prayers fuel her journey. And I had the opportunity to be immersed in that environment in Atlanta when we had a celebration for Bree, and all the family, all the cousins, everybody was there. It was fabulous. A proud alumna of Emory University and Simmons University, Bree dedicates herself to her craft and has a strong commitment to amplifying diverse voices. Go Forth and Tell, The Life of Augusta Baker, Librarian and Master Storyteller, celebrates the acclaimed librarian, Augusta Baker's creativity, resilience, and unwavering spirit as a champion of books, writers, librarians, and teachers. Throughout her career, Baker advocated for positive images of black characters in children's books, and she would surely be excited about this biographical picture book that makes her life more accessible to young readers. And April Harrison is the acclaimed illustrator whose latest masterpiece, this book we're celebrating today, illuminates the pages with her distinct artistic vision. Among Harrison's accolades are a 2023 Coretta Scott King Illustrator Honor Award for Me and the Boss, written by Michelle Edwards, and securing the prestigious 2020 Coretta Scott King John Steptoe Award for New Talent Illustrator for What is Given from the Heart, written by the late Patricia McKissack. With a career spanning over 2 decades, April Harrison has firmly established herself as a force within the realm of illustration and fine art. From South Carolina, April approaches her art with a profound reverence for themes of faith, family, and friendship. Through her rich mixed media artwork, she intricately weaves visual narratives that resonate deeply with audiences, showcasing her mastery of color, collage techniques, and inventive use of found objects. Harrison's work graces the collections of esteemed institutions such as Vanderbilt University, Virginia Commonwealth University Medical Center, and the Atlanta Housing Authority, alongside numerous private collections. Her exhibitions at renowned venues include the Morris Museum of Art in Augusta, Georgia, Hampton University Museum in Hampton, Virginia, and Spartanburg, South Carolina County Museum of Art. Harrison's journey as a self-taught artist is a testament to her unwavering dedication to her craft. Visitors to her website or her social media platforms on Instagram and Twitter at April Harrison are invited to immerse themselves in the captivating world of her artistry, a world where every stroke of the brush tells a story and every piece reflects the indomitable spirit of creativity and expression. So, join me in welcoming Bree and April.
So I'm Breanna McDaniel, Breanna J. McDaniel, because I publish under different things, BJ McDaniel, BJM, all sorts of stuff, and for academics, but for this glorious tradition that I get to be a part of, which is African American children's literature, I publish under Breanna J. McDaniel. And I just want to shout out Dr. Diane Johnson, Dr. Nancy Tolson, my homegirl Tarini, and my new nephew, because they're all a part of this brilliant tradition, studying feminism, creating pathways into talking about Black children's literature. Dr. Johnson's comments on why picture books, images, and the words need each other. Maybe they don't get in the same spotlight and the platform that Perry Nodelman has his conversations. I love Perry. I know Perry. Perry has my back in all sorts of ways. But you have been a defining force for me, Dr. Tosin, talking about the blues aesthetic in Black children's literature, and then Dr. Martin, of course, giving us a spectrum of understanding around Black children's literature and how it exists from the past and forward. I think it's just critical for me to set the stage and to be grateful to be standing here, sitting here, and to be surrounded by this tradition, because it's a gift to be a part of this legacy with Dr. Baker. Dr. Baker. I mean, shoot, listen, you don't need a doctorate to be a doctor sometimes. Sometimes you get a PhD in life, and absolutely, Augusta Braxton Baker has that. So, by request of April, I will get started by reading the story to you all. That's what you wanted, right?
Yes.
Okay.
She puts her heart into this story.
So I'm going to read it like a story to myself, because I've never been able to do that before, but you all can take a look here. Okay? This is Go Forth and Tell, the life of Augusta Baker, librarian and master storyteller, written by Breanna J. McDaniel and illustrated by Coretta Scott King Illustrator Honor Award winner, April Harrison. Augusta Braxton Baker grew up to be a master storyteller. But before that, she was an amazing story listener. Growing up in Baltimore, it didn't matter whether she was sitting at the kitchen table, walking to the store, or relaxing under a tree. When her storytelling grandmother started her tales, Augusta stopped, stuck out her eager ears, and she listened. Her grandmother's lilting, tilting voice shaped incredible worlds and passed them down to Augusta. Through that voice, she traveled to where Bird Rabbit laughed in briar patches and where Arthur gallivanted with Excalibur. In these worlds, people who started out discarded and mistreated became heroes who slayed dragons or used their smarts to get themselves out of trouble. These stories taught Augusta that where there's a will, there's a what?
Way.
Where there's a will, there's a what?
Way.
And she never, ever forgot that. Augusta was enchanted by words and the way they could change how she thought and learned. Could she become a storyteller too? Could her stories help other people become better listeners? It was time to find out. Augusta pocketed her grandmother's stories and took her own lilting, tilting voice to a teacher's college in Albany, New York. In school, one of her teachers taught a lesson on folk stories. Augusta's grandmother's tales jumped joyfully to the front of her mind, and Augusta knew they were part of a bigger story, a story of movement and courage. The tales begged to be plucked from her memories and retold. Augusta knew that her calling was to be in front of a crowd, raising her voice and guiding children of all ages through the wide and wonderful spaces of her stories. That calling took her to the 135th Street branch of the New York Public Library in Harlem, where Augusta became a children's librarian, happily sharing stories with others in her community. Many of the children Augusta served in Harlem were African American, but there were hardly any books with Black people in them. The ones that the library did have were rude, mean, and just plain wrong. Augusta realized there was a lot of work to do, but where there's a will, there's a way. All right now. She knew that the eager listening ears of young solemn James Baldwin and the poetry-loving Audre Lorde deserved to hear stories where they laughed and gallivanted. She knew they could one day tell their own stories if she only showed them how. She decided to use her voice, not just to share the stories she already knew, but to search out new ones and even create some of her own. Augusta remembered how the heroes in her grandmother's stories sometimes started out at the bottom but would rise up. She wanted Black children to have heroes that rose up and looked, talked, and shined bright, just like them. She created the James Weldon Johnson Memorial Collection at the 135th Street branch to showcase honest, caring depictions of Black folks. And she shared and published her lists so countless others could learn from them. She went out of her way to support educators, librarians, and writers, and they supported her too. Educators like Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black history and founder of Black History Month, and librarians like Augusta's colleague in Chicago, Charlamagne Rollins, the first Black president of the American Library Association's Children's Division. Authors and artists like John Steptoe, Virginia Hamilton, Tom Feelings, and Walter Dean Myers, who created stories for and about Black people, sharing their lives and experiences around the globe. We're getting close to my favorite spread, so bear with me. Eventually, Augusta became the coordinator of children's services in all of the New York Public Library branches. She was the very first Black person, not Black woman, but Black person, to ever hold that position. Known as the mistress of storytelling, Augusta traveled all over the country, gifting people her time and her stories. It didn't matter where she was, teaching classes at Columbia University, hosting a radio show, or on the set at Sesame Street. As one journalist said, wherever Augusta went, she painted worlds with her words. Full, bright worlds for the children who make our own world whole. In 1980, Augusta accepted a job created just for her as the Master Storyteller in Residence at the University of South Carolina. To this day, the city of Columbia honors her with an annual festival called Augusta Baker's Dozen. There, under trees and tents with food and friends, griots and authors tell tales, shining a bright light and painting a more brilliant, bold world with their words. Go and have a listen. Yeah. So I won't read the whole author's note, but it's okay if I read just a little bit. Pardon me, Miss Carnes? Miss Michelle Carnes? It's me, Breanna McDaniel from the Fairburn Hobgood Library. My childhood librarian turned and beamed at me, laughing with the brightness that had carried me through middle school and into high school. Oh my goodness. Hello, Breanna. In an impossible sea of people at the 2018 American Library Association's New Orleans convention, I'd managed to find Miss Carnes, and we settled into a hug that left me in tears. I cry a lot. We embraced and exclaimed so joyfully that a stranger saw we were having a moment and asked if we wanted a picture. Standing cheek to cheek with a woman who had known me when I was young, passionate about everything girl, and had, with her guidance and grace, helped me grow into the scholar and writer I am today, I fully understood why Audre Lorde adored Augusta Baker so much. Miss Baker had taught her to read. She had saved her life, just as my own librarian has saved mine. I've had plenty of Augusta Bakers in my life, and so it was an absolute privilege to be asked to write about this incredible innovator and path maker. Growing up, I heard, Where there's a will, there's a way. Every time I tried to quit a project, activity, or conversation that seemed a little too hard. Everything about Augusta Baker's life embodies that saying for me. She graduated high school early and immediately left home for college. She believed in her dreams and refused to back down when racism and segregation tried to stop her from getting the education she wanted in New York. As a librarian, Augusta Baker refused to accept that the horrible images of black children and black people in the books available in her library were the only ones that existed. Miss Baker's will found a way to change how publishers, writers, and other librarians approach black children's literature through her curated book lists and the stories she shared. The people she touched at every level of her career, from Audre Lorde and James Baldwin to Ezra Jack Keats and John Steptoe, they built a network of creators that paved the way for stories like mine. Her bright, imagined worlds became my reality, delivered through love, care, and storytelling by folks like Miss Carnes. Augusta Baker always put her community first, and her stories were gifts to grateful listeners who would pocket them to share later, drawing inspiration from them forever. This is me and Miss Carnes, and that's a picture that I talked about in the author's note, and that's Augusta Baker with one of her patrons. And then I just want to leave you before we keep going with this advice from Augusta Braxton Baker. Children of all ages want to hear stories. Select well, prepare well, and then go forth and just tell. The end.
While she's getting that ready, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. You know, a lot of times people are curious about visual artists because they kind of pop out of nowhere and you wonder, oh, how do they do that? But you know, I started my journey in a roundabout kind of way. I mean, I became a nurse first because, you know, of course, it has a lot to do with visual art. So I became a nurse first. I think I did that for about, 5, 6 years. And then I became a medical insurance claims processor. Yeah, it tied into the art as well. And I did that for like 30 odd years. And the reason I tell you that is because during my time working those odd jobs, I've always wanted to be an artist. Always wanted to be an artist. So I always piddle around the house painting. And I would submit my work to different publishing houses, different greeting card companies, and I always get rejection after rejection after rejection. So it's interesting when I finally got so many rejections, I filed them all away. And I said, I'm just going to give that up, just do fine art, do my regular job, and just call it a day. And then what was really a blessing in disguise is once I gave it up, I thought I gave it up, but I really didn't. When I gave it up, then the actual publisher came to me and asked me, Random Penguin House came to me to say, would you be interested in illustrating a book? This was my first time. And I was like, I don't even know how to illustrate a book. I don't know what's required. I don't know what they mean by all the different languages they use in the publishing world. But I just said yes, because I figured I could do it. You know what I mean? Why not? I always say like Hamilton, I'm not going to miss my shot now. I'm going to take the shot. And it was interesting because they asked me to do an actual painting of one page of the book, the manuscript. They sent me the manuscript, crossed out the author's name. They sent it to me and they said, hey, look, we want you to do a full, complete page. We also want it to be in action. We don't want any stills. We want to see how you work with action. And I'm like, I'm good for it. Yeah. Didn't know what I was going to do. But I did it, and they actually said, we want you to do this book. After they looked at it, they said, we want you to do the book. And which is really different for me because that wasn't on my agenda. I had put that to the side. And I say that especially to young people, you know, follow your heart. You know, you might have to do other things in the meantime, you know, to pay the bill sometimes, but always keep it focused. You know what your real focus is, because I always say that I'm older now, much older now. But the thing about me is I started when I was in my 40s trying to do this, and now I'm 67. I just had a birthday. So I'm really happy about that. I'm just excited that my life, the golden years of my life, has been my greatest years. You know, not saying you have to wait that long. Don't get, oh no, it's going to be 40 years. Don't do that. But the amazing thing about this particular book, Go Forth and Tell, Miss Breanna wanted me to be the illustrator, which I thought was really unique, you know. And they sent the manuscript to me to see if I wanted to actually illustrate the book. And I looked at it and I said, nah. No, I'm just kidding. Of course, I wanted to do this book. It's about Augusta Baker, who would want to honor this fabulous librarian and storyteller. I mean, I didn't even really know about her until I started reading about her, and then she got me interested in reading other material about her, and I was just so excited. I was so excited. I think I reached out to a few people. Dr. Johnson helped me out. She introduced me to Augusta's her grandchild. I don't know if you guys know. She lives here in Columbia, and she's an attorney. Do you know her? Pam Paul. Did you? Gosh, she reached out to me too. But anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I start a painting, because I don't know anything about illustration, and I know illustrators, they go into Photoshop and they do all the fancy computer work. It's all hand for me. I'm sorry, I don't know any other way. I think if I did know some other way, I might incorporate it into what I already do, my existing methods. But for now, I seem to get jobs. I mean, they book me, they keep booking, so I'll keep doing this, you know. But I always start everything as an abstract, even if I don't know what it's going to be. I don't even care. Because that's how I start each and every one of my paintings. I started as an abstract. So what happens once I create the abstract is the actual figure comes to me. Now, I don't know if you guys can see a figure right now. Can you see one within it? You can. What you see?
That's like an eye.
Exactly. Where's your eye? See, everyone sees something different, and you go with that eye. I mean, I see a full face.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see it? You see it, right? And you just like drawing by numbers. You just start drawing what you see, you know, and it becomes an actual painting. So I don't use figurative people, you know, I don't use real people, images of you, pictures of that. I just make them up, you know, as I go. Oh, I have it. What the heck? St. Everton. Oh, did you do that?
No.
Oh, I did. I was gonna say, oh my God, I thought it was gonna work. Anyway, that was another sample. This was the original cover. You notice she has the land around her. But when it was submitted, they decided to chop it up a little bit. They chopped some of the buildings. They also chopped, they turned her around. She's, as you notice, she's on this side now. They did a flip. They put, I understood why they did the flip, you know, but anyway, but they did the land. They took the land. They said they would try to keep it, but they could not keep it. And that's another thing as an illustrator, you have to decide when to just say, okay, you know, or we'll never get a book out, you know, to be honest. Oh, you want to show it that way? This piece, what I tried to do when I was doing the illustration, this is the signature page, actually. And the book she has in her hand is about African folklore. Augusta's grandmother used to tell her stories about African folklore, and those were her favorites, actually. And I thought, well, instead of just putting a random book, just let me pay attention to what I'm reading, you know. So as an illustrator, you need to take all this in, information, you know, not like an author with words, but you know, you kind of painting words, you know what I mean? This particular one, same thing, Young Years, is one of the books. Like, she edited different books with stories, of good stories about African American children and their depictions and how we should be represented and children should be represented. That's why I love her so much, and I think that's why I relate to her as an artist, because I think I would have been, if she knew me back then, you know, she would have said, April, I want you to, you know, do a few of these kids' pictures, because I'm sure I would have been, you know, yeah, I'll do them justice. You think I do them justice? I'm very anal with that, you know, because I want our kids to see themselves in a beautiful way. I want them, when they're at story time, to say, that's me. I can hold my head up now. You know, I don't want them to read Little Black Sambo and be like, oh, I'm so ashamed. You know, so I try to think about that, even in my visual art, I mean my fine art. But it's some of my fine art is actually in that book. On the bottom, I don't know if you can see that. I actually incorporate different pieces of meat in every book I do. And I call them like Waldo, Fine Waldo kind of things, you know. Just interesting things for me, most people won't even know about. The same thing with this particular page. She has, I used to be a poet, and that's one of my poems she's reading. So, when you get the book, flip it and read it. It's one line missing. Sorry. But it's one line missing. It wouldn't fit, okay? And the painting that she has in that particular book, that's another one of my paintings. So I always try to keep a part of me in each one. And this particular, I don't know why I put this one up here other than the fact that it shows her candle, for one thing. It shows the candle, and the children in this scene was slated for another book. But they decided they didn't want to use it. And I said, well, I'll just use it for Augusta Baker, right? But the candle, and I have a candle here, and it was supposed to be lit, but she had an accident on the way here. Yeah, her head fell off. Yeah, I was so. But what it represents is Augusta, before every story, she would light a candle. And she would put it in a place. And once the story was over, she would either blow it out or she would ask one of the children, did they have a birthday, for instance, for that day? And if they did, she would let that child blow it out. And I thought it was important. And that's the reason I put it on the first page, too. Because I'm sure her grandmother did the same thing. I might be wrong. But I digress. And this particular one, I don't think it was anything. Oh, that was part of the candle. I tried to remember the candle, and most of them, I might have missed a few. And the books in back of her, you see some of them have titles, right? I didn't just put any book back there. I actually put books she approved of later on in her years. She didn't approve of them all at once, of course, but the ones that she had on the list that she circulated, those are some of the books she actually approved of. So I tried to keep that in mind when I did it. The painting in the little circle there, that's one of my original pieces of art. So I tried to always keep some of the meat inside. I don't know why that's there. I'll just get that. Another thing about illustrating, when you're doing different characters that are copyrighted or have a patent on it, whatever, you have to get permission. But sometimes they say no. But Sesame Street was, he said, okay, you can use them. But see, I only had Ernie and Bert. That's their name, right? I'm getting older. But Ernie and Bert only had them in it first. And they said, you're going to have to put her inside. The lawyer, legal team said, put her in there and we got a deal. So sometimes it just goes like that. This particular piece is Breanna's favorite. I didn't know what was her favorite. She told me. She cried through it when she told me.
How would you tell them that?
You just told them, and you were crying. Really? Wasn't she? Okay, anyway. But with collage, I get a little bit little sometimes, and I actually use a paintbrush. I broke one of my own and just used it. So I said, that's so cute. I started to take it off for real, though, and just draw one, but that's it. I couldn't take it off. But I tried to incorporate her books in there, too. So you'll see books in there. Even though to you right now, you might not be able to see it. But when you get up close and you look at it, her actual books are in there.
Can you go back, please? So I also explained earlier today when we were talking to some kids that one of the reasons why this is so special to me is because she is painting a world, but she's also presented in this celestial place. And a lot of my books I've been blessed to have illustrators who find interpretations in the stars for these black girls, these black women who are flying. And when I was growing up, I was obsessed with a book called Tar Beach. And the illustrator of that book, Faith Ringo, who has just passed, rest in power, was someone whose journey I followed through her quilting, through her political art, and all of it was because in Tar Beach you see this flying black girl, and I knew she believed. She believed that black people could fly, could soar, could do so many things. And so I get emotional because with this I see the potential of not just Augusta Baker, but all the children that she's building a world for. You see the texture, you see all the different movement that April has put in the different spaces of this picture, of this image, of this illustration. And I can't imagine, what it is to be able to live in a world like this until I realized that people like Augusta Baker have created worlds like this for me to live in this plane right now. So I could go on and on about why I love it. Ooh, see my voice cracking. About why I love this image, but that is a part of why, because it's a blessing to have these stories. A Flying Black Girl, which Virginia Hamilton talked about, which all of these incredible folks have talked about, and the legacy is there. And April, before I even knew, had already included it as well. So that's why I'm crying.
You didn't say anything about your cry. I think it's wonderful. They express their emotions, you know, be mindful. Okay. Thanks to Professor Johnson, I was able to secure a couple of pictures of Augusta from her granddaughter, and I just fell in love with that picture. I didn't use it, but I just fell in love with it. I just wanted to see how she really looked, so visually I could kind of recreate her. Because we had an argument about what color were her eyes, and that was a big thing at the publishers because I thought they were what?
Gray?
Yeah, hazel, like, and I kind of tried to get with the hazel, more like hazel. Yeah, and her granddaughter did confirm that. And her light hair. I'm just going off. That's her son. Isn't that a pretty picture? I love that picture. I couldn't use it in the book though because I didn't get permission. This was my first cover of Augusta Baker. You don't want to do her serious. I just want, yeah, right. Look, she has a candle and everything, right? And I was just so proud of her, and I'm just sending it to the publisher, and I'm saying, oh, this is going to be great. They said, we don't want her like that. We want her to relate more to the children this time. Sometimes, when I did Shirley Chisholm, it was like, no, Shirley's going to look like Shirley. But, with Augusta. So I keep it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to finish it, because I loved it. And I remember starting this. This was the first page, and I want to mention this because of Breanna's words. When I first started this, I had little Augusta kind of listening, kind of playing with the figures. She had little characters running everywhere, doing everything, flipping up and down. And like this, see, they're flipping up on the page, they're on the book, they're running down, they have a guy on her shoulder. I mean, it was just going to be all over the place. But I read her words again, and it said she was a great story listener. Is that how you said that? A story listener. And I saw her in that posture of listening and going quietly listening because her grandmother's stories were so interesting to her, and she wanted to take it all in. And so I had to change it to her. That page, the page after, she's in a posture of listening. And so I didn't want to get rid of them either, but you do what you have to do, honestly, because I had her more involved in these pictures as well. Now I'm into certain books that I've been a part of, just so you can kind of maybe pick them up, because I don't think they have them here. But this is Nikki Grimes' book, and she did the Women Poets of Harlem, and she asked it's an anthology, and she asked different artists to share a page, or create a page. And it's a very interesting book, very beautiful book. And this is one of my books that came out last year, H is for Harlem. I don't know if you know about that one. I don't know, you might know about it. I illustrated this Professor Dr. Dinah Johnson. You have a celebrity here. And she was very persistent too. She wanted me to actually illustrate her book, and I thank you for that. I really do. It's wonderful when authors go to bat for you, So I'm very, very thankful. And this was a Shirley Chisholm there. They actually wanted her to look like Shirley, And I had Shirley like the cartoon looking Shirley, and they said, nah, you gotta do Shirley right now. You have to make sure like Shirley. So and this is the one that came out last year, and this one is the one that won the Coretta Scott King Honor Award last year. Me and the boss. And I think that's it. Oh, I want to just show you some of my actual fine art, so you kind of get an idea of where I'm from and where I'm trying to go with these illustrations, whatever. And all of this is collage work. I collect trash. I collect bottle caps. I do. I collect anything and everything, and I use them in my art. Old torn papers, paintings that I want to discard, I use them in new work. And I don't throw anything away. My house is crazy messy. Only the art room. The rest of the house looks nice. Yeah, it was very nice. Just let me see some of just the kind of type of look of it, so you can kind of get an idea. But I think that's it. Oh, that's the last one. But that's just a little bit about me and how I got involved with Augusta. And I think that's
All right, so I have a few questions and then we'll open it up for everyone else who wants to ask questions. And one of the things about the title, Go Forth and Tell, because Augusta Baker was really, I remember reading a little bit in the archives about one of her students in her storytelling class who was trying to get a story to work. And Augusta told her that story did not choose you. That the story chooses the teller, and that's not the right story for this student. So she needed to choose something else. So I was wondering, what about the story of Augusta Baker? I know you were asked, but what chose you? Because you could have said no, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also, April, what chose you about her story?
I'll answer first because I know hers is really deep. But I kind of addressed it a little bit. She was a remarkable woman. I tend to go for the heart when I'm asked to recreate a story in images. I'll read the manuscript at least 2 or 3 times and get a feel for it. When I found out who she was, it piqued my interest. I mean, it was a beautiful story. I thought we related as far as images. I had this thing about an image of a person being drawn and being shown. And when I was coming up, we didn't have images like this. You know, just like she let us know, we did not have great images. And so I wanted to be the change maker in that as well. So I feel I relate to her in that way. So yes, the story was a yes. You know, I go for the heart, the soul when I accept. So that's why I went for Augusta Baker. And I really appreciate you writing about her because she was a phenomenal woman, very phenomenal.
I think for me, the more I got into the story of who she was and where she come from, I saw a lot of parallels between our journeys, how important her grandmother was to who she would become. My grandmother was very important to who I am now. She kind of had this home away home where she went, you know, she was from Baltimore, which, you know, depending on who you are, is the South. I know, I get it. But then she left and then she came back and found renewed home and renewed, you know, connection with the people in her community. And that has been a part of my journey. But I think the fact that she, you know, taught so many people. I was telling you, Doc Martin, you know, a couple of weeks ago, I did a program in Brooklyn, and you know, a woman came up to me and she said her name was Valerie, and she was like, you know, my mom is here and she was taught by Augusta Baker. And I said, taught what? And she looked at me and she was like, storytelling. And I was like, no. And she said, yes. And she said she's going to be 90 in September. And she came over to me and she was smiling and she was sharing all of these stories about how it had been sitting underneath the tutelage and the wings of Augusta Baker. Augusta Baker was a little bit of a taskmaster when it came to storytelling. Oh, you know. Okay. And so she would talk about how she would tell a story and then Augusta Baker would be like, not like that. And she would help and guide her students through what it meant to tell a story that had impact in different ways. And I wouldn't say that I fell into children's literature, but it was something that came to me after I thought I was going to be like one of the great 21st century African American novelists. My agent would say, so write the novel. I'm working on it, Wendy. But I got an opportunity to really delve into picture books, and for Augusta Baker to be someone who saw the power in children's literature and was making a way for children's literature to be so important to me, however many decades later, I feel like that connection has to mean something. It can't just come out of nowhere and not mean something significant. And so when I got the opportunity to write the story, I just dove in. And what's interesting about this story is that we didn't even get to visit the archives until after the pandemic, the height of the pandemic, because I started writing the story when the pandemic started. So all of the bibliography that I built up until, I don't know, a little while, and I insisted on the citations because I was like, I'm a researcher, it's nonfiction, put the citations in. It took a while to bring it all together, and then for April and the work that she was doing as a researcher to make sure things were historically accurate, and then to write a book that felt accessible, didn't have a whole lot of words because it's a picture book, even though it's a biography. I just don't think that I would have been able to jump in if I didn't have kind of a path already laid for me with someone who was a master storyteller who was pouring into me, and I was trying to pour back out that story.
I think the first thing that struck me when I saw the cover was the hands. And how many of you have seen Augusta Baker's retirement book? If you are at USC at some point, you should try to see it, or even in proximity. Because what they did when she was about to retire was they sent blank pages to authors and illustrators and storytellers and agents. I mean, just like the 20th century children's literature world. And so for me, what it spoke was her hands have touched so many artists who became those who are creating for us now, and who are like Faith Ringgold, we're losing, who have been so important in 20th and even 21st century. So I'm wondering from April, why the large hands?
Actually, if you have a time to Google me, you'll see a bunch of them.
You like big hands?
Well, no, it's because of the importance of the touch, the bringing you in. And I always felt that that particular extremity is so important. A lot of times we're getting away from that. We're becoming more colder because we got this all the time.
Yeah.
And the power of the touch is kind of diminishing a bit. So I always want to put it in your face. Like, that's pretty much in your face. The importance of the hands and what they do and how they share and how they love and how they embrace and how they bond. And that's why hers are big. So you'll know that she's going forth and telling the story. But I can only imagine how she actually told that story with actual children. I can only see her expressing it with love, So I wanted to show how important her hands were in this book.
Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, for both the text and the illustrations, how did y'all decide who to portray, like who to mention in terms of James Baldwin, Audre Lorde? I mean, it could have been, she influenced so many people. How did you choose?
My editor chose because there was a lot more people on the list that I had. I was like, and then when we went to saw the retirement book, Maurice Sendak, and she was like, girl,
We've been there all day.
Yeah.
And then when April came back with these beautiful illustrations, I think there was one point where we were talking. So also me and April did something that's a little bit different from how a lot of illustrators and authors work here in the United States. A lot of times you kind of just get the art, you get the words, and there's not a lot of conversation. But me and April started having conversations, and that's why I got to kind of investigate alongside her some of these historical aspects that were important. She asked me, what color were Augusta Baker's eyes? I was like, I do not know. And I realized I don't think I had ever seen a full color picture of her. And so then we started trying to find, and it was just a movement together. In the UK, they do that a lot, right, Tarini? Like the picture book author and the illustrator, they work together kind of through the process. But it's different here. And so the honor of being able to do that with April was really, it wasn't just important, but it wasn't just a privilege, but it was important to kind of seeing the movement of the book as it went along. Because it's still her interpretation of my words, and to be able to see your words come alive in such a vivid way is always going to be an honor.
And it's one thing I insist upon. I have to meet the author. I want to talk to them. I want to know what were they thinking, how do they feel, Is it something important that they want me to showcase? I may not, but I just want to know. I mean, how important are certain things to you? I had one person, what is it, Nana Akoi goes to school. For the author there, her thing was, her name Trisha Elam Walker. She wanted her little girls to have natural hair. She said, I just need them to have pom-poms or something. I just want them to have something like that. She said, but if you don't do it, that's so cool. But I wanted to do that, and so she was so thrilled when she saw, what's her name? See, all these names are going. Zoya. I mean, Zoya. Goodness, almost had it. No, it's yeah, something like that. That's a shame. I can't remember. But she just wanted her to have natural hair, something so simple. And I thought that was the least I could do. I've had instances where it didn't turn out so well. Getting to know the author. Because they had a lot of suggestions and they were with needle pointing and just. So I see why they do it sometimes. They separate. Because the author has a vision, but so does the illustrator. And the illustrator can bring that book to life or the words to life in a way the author probably, wow, I never knew. So you can't stifle her too much. You need to at least see what she'll do. So what I do is the first, we have the first sketch. This is how we get paid too, by the way.
First draft.
When you sign the contract, money. All right. When you send in the first draft, money. Only after it's approved now. Only after it's approved. Might be 3-4 months before it's approved. Then you go to the final. And then now the newest thing is you wait till it's released to the public to get your final. Yeah, we're working on that one. Yeah, that's different. But when I first started in the business, they didn't do that. But now it's a requirement. Yeah. And I think it's a requirement because what I was told is the more money you receive, they have to spread it out to make it work for them as well. Especially in the publishing. And a lot of times books are not selling like they should, blah, 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 blah. And I want my books to sell. You know what I'm saying? You don't just want to create a book and it not sell, So you do what you can to promote your own book. So I do understand. And so I'm not fussy about it. I could be, but I'm not fussy about it.
Buy the book and tell your students, if you teach, to buy the book, buy it for your libraries, all of that, to support the artists. That's really important. I have a little Augusta Baker story, one more question, and then I'm going to open it up. When I was a naturalist at Sesame Centennial State Park out there on Two Notch Road, we had a Halloween, festivities, and I called Augusta Baker to see if she would come and tell a story. She said, honey, do you know how old I am? I won't be doing that, but thank you for asking.
Oh, that's cute.
I grew up in Greenview, and when she retired, she lived in a house in the next street over from me. So I went to school with her grandchildren, with Pam anyway. She's I think a class before me. But anyway, while many storytellers see telling as an art unto itself, Augusta Baker saw storytelling as a means to an end, to give children a hunger for literacy and a love and a passion for literature. So what are some ways, and I see a lot of little ways, what are some ways that you conveyed that idea in this book? Because she really wanted children to love literature and have a passion for literacy and not just storytelling unto itself. So,
Well, I always think whenever a child feels seen, first of all, that's your first step. If they can't relate to what you're doing, it's a null point. You know what I mean? And so I think, from my perspective as an illustrator, I want them to be seen. I want them to be seen so they'll be heard. Someone listened to them. You know what I mean? Or they are still listening to them. So for me, that's where I come in with the illustration part. Because if you're not seen, you don't really want to hear, to be honest. It's like you don't exist. So that's my part.
I think that what I appreciate about Augusta Baker too is that I think there's literacy when you think about the written word, but she understands that it seemed like she understood that there were different types of literacy that we should all have access to and to share out. And coming from, I'm from Atlanta. I think we already said that, but I'll say it again. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. There, we had something with the kids earlier today. I think, I get to understand a lot more about a certain type of history of storytelling around the civil rights movement because it's so much in your face being from Atlanta. And those stories, it could be on a plaque and it could be in a booklet. But most of the time, it happens when you visit somebody's house and they talk about what things were like at that time. And that's just as valid as the points that we have and that we write down. And so I think it was important that in this space of the book, we saw Augusta Baker getting stories in different spaces, under trees, like they do here with the Augusta Baker's dozen. Like you're literally moving her legacy and the ideas of literacy that she's, reinforced back for us back into the space. And that's critical because there's a lot of things that we know now about reading, and about some of the times the ways we consume content nowadays where you want to find a balance. I think I was in a conference this weekend, and this woman was who is not from the Caribbean was using AI to create a Caribbean voice. She was like, "See," and the people were like, "No, we don't see. Explain it some more." And everybody was like, "Oh man, girl, like get out of there." But it's just, but I sat next to this other woman and she was talking throughout the whole thing, and she was like, when I was growing up and there's valid spaces and there's enough space, I think, on the bookshelf, whether it's through oral storytelling bookshelf or the physical bookshelf that we have for the different types of literacy to exist. And I believe that, and I think that Augusta Baker believed that. She was a hustler. She had a radio show. She was consulting not just for Sesame Street, but for other spaces. And in those spaces, as she's moving and shaking, she's obviously having to show what it means for her to be impactful in that space. That's storytelling. That's the type of literacy that, as a young Black woman going to a PhD, I needed to understand that. And it came from being able to tell who I am through a different mode of storytelling. I am rambling, so I will stop. But oral storytelling, literacy at different mediums and spaces, I think that's where she was coming from. And I think it's important.
So, who has a question?
I do.
Yes, Dr. Tolson.
You knew I was going.
Go ahead.
One of the things that I appreciate about you both is that storytelling is that open mind. It's basically when you're a storyteller, you're the open coloring book, and whoever is listening fills in with their own colors. One of the things I found fascinating is, April, when we were talking about Arthur, and the sword, you made it a little black boy.
I sure did.
What was your inspiration for that? And I appreciate it too.
Because I want African American children to know they can be anybody they want to be, anything they want to be. If they see it, they believe it.
Yeah.
When they see us show up, they believe they can be an illustrator. They believe they can be an author, a writer. They believe it. We need to get in front, lead the way. If I have an opportunity, there'll always be an African American hero or heroine. Say that. Heroine. I can never say that right off. But there'll always be one, in the books that I create, because I pay attention to that. Because now, this is the future though, but I'm doing a book about Violet and the Frost King. And that was a book written by the late Virginia Hamilton and her son. And so, of course, there were no black fairies in that book, but they want black fairies. And I was so happy to oblige. So I'm working on that book, and its release is 2025. It'll be out 2025. So look for that because it'll be a real special book.
Other questions?
Oh, how pretty. Oh, thank you.
For later.
Oh, I don't mind that.
Anybody have any other questions?
No questions?
I mean, you don't have to have any questions.
Did we answer them all? Is that what it is? Yeah.
Well, if there are no more questions, I did. So April's birthday was on Saturday, and Doc Martin's birthday is tomorrow. So if you all have a little bit of capacity and space, can we sing Happy Birthday? Okay. I don't.
Which one you want? Which one?
Flowers?
Okay, you can have it.
Okay. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear
Mr. Martin.
April. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Stevie.
Happy
No.
birthday. Happy birthday to you.
Really,
They started
people?
happy birthday.
Okay.
Awesome. All right.
Oh, they still singing. Go ahead.
Well, I think we're
All
signing-
right.
They're signing books. Y'all signing
We're
books?
signing.
Okay, they are signing books. They would be happy to sign a book for you. So, thank you all for coming.
I brought some pens. Yes.
Go, Rena.